My parents happen to own a small shop in our town. It's a humble establishment that sells regular groceries and locally sourced food. They have been dedicated to running it for over 20 years, with my dad taking his responsibilities very seriously. He would keep the store open until midnight every night, and sometimes even stayed later. When I turned 16, I started helping out a few hours a week, and by the time I turned 18, I was working there full-time while also pursuing online college courses. On this particular night, my dad had his day off, and my mom was dealing with some health issues. So, it was up to me to close the store. During the last few hours of the night, the store usually isn't very busy, and there isn't much left to restock. Around 9 o'clock, there were hardly any customers around. As I entered the room, only 1 or 2 people had arrived. I decided to grab a sandwich from the fridge and take a quick lunch break. Of course, right when I started eating, someone walked in. I hurried back to the front desk, setting the sandwich aside, and patiently waited for the customer to finish shopping. While waiting, I pulled out my phone, and after a couple of minutes, I glanced up to check on the customer's progress. To my surprise, they were nowhere to be found. I scanned the room again, but still couldn't spot them. Perhaps they were in some obscure corner that I couldn't see. I waited a few more minutes, but they never showed up, emerged into view. I didn't even notice their presence as I walked around the counter and began browsing through the aisles. It didn't take me long to spot a man at the end of the second aisle. He was crouched down, fixated on the floor, motionless and silent. As soon as I approached him and made eye contact, he abruptly stood up and continued to stare at me. His wide, unsettling eyes captured my attention, but after a few seconds, he swiftly walked away without uttering a single word. Witnessing his sudden departure, my instinct was to investigate the spot where he had been crouching, hoping to find a reason for his peculiar behavior. However, there was nothing there. The fact that he had spent all that time crouched in the aisle left me feeling unnerved. I cautiously approached the front door, ensuring that the area was clear. Despite the darkness, I couldn't spot him anywhere. Returning to the counter, I remained on high alert. Hours passed without a single customer entering the store. As closing time approached, thoughts of the man faded from my mind. I was simply eager to go home. Locking up the front door, I grabbed my bag and headed towards the back exit. Suddenly, a deafening bang echoed through the store, freezing me in place. The sound originated from the back, and its intensity left me bewildered. With a sense of unease, I slowly made my way towards the corner. Peering down the back hallway, dust filled the air as the loosely open metal back door revealed itself. And there, standing in the hallway, was the man from earlier continued to stare at me, his eyes wide open. I felt a wave of fear wash over me, rendering me speechless and immobile. His unwavering determination to break in was unsettling, yet there was no trace of anger or any emotion on his face. I took a few cautious steps back before finally finding the courage to sprint towards the front of the store. I didn't stop running until I reached the other side of the street, where I immediately dialed 911 for help. I also called my dad, and he hurried over. I glanced over to ensure I was all right. The man at the store had disappeared by the time the police arrived, but he had carelessly left a sledgehammer on the pavement near the door. Nothing seemed to be missing or stolen, leaving his intentions a mystery. However, it was evident that he was mentally unstable, leaving room for speculation about what he might have been plotting. Fortunately, I was spared from finding out. I work as a warehouse worker for a small business in my city. It's not a glamorous career by any means, just something I do to make ends meet. My job mainly involves unloading shipments and organizing the warehouse. It's a straightforward task, and I usually pass the time by listening to music through my earbuds. Since the warehouse isn't very large, I rarely have anyone else working with me overnight, except during holidays. Tonight was just like any other night. I arrived, counted the stock, plugged in my headphones, and began unloading boxes from the shipments. I started at 10 o'clock, and it was probably around 12 to 1 o'clock as I was engrossed in my work. A sudden sound interrupted my concentration. I paused, removing my headphones to listen intently. However, the noise seemed to have vanished into thin air. The old building I was in had a tendency to creak and groan, especially on windy nights, so I brushed it off as just another one of its eerie sounds. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that what I had heard was a distinct knock. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate. I cautiously made my way to the back of the building, scanning my surroundings, and then proceeded to check the front. To my surprise, there was nothing out of the ordinary inside. With a sigh of relief, I opened the front door and peered outside, only to be greeted by an empty parking lot and a still, quiet night. I quickly locked the door behind me, reassuring myself that it must have been a figment of my imagination. However, I couldn't help but remain on high alert, opting to keep my headphones off for the next 20 minutes or so. Time passed before I heard another sound, but it wasn't a mere knock. It was a solitary thump that echoed from the front. Hastily, I made my way down the hallway and towards the front section of the warehouse. To my surprise, there was nothing there. No evidence of any disturbance or anyone at the door. However, I couldn't shake off the feeling of unease. I stood in the center of the room, taking a moment to survey my surroundings. Quietly, I stood there, my senses alert, searching for any sign of what could be causing these unsettling noises. A sense of unease washed over me, as if something was amiss. Curiosity compelled me to approach the front door and lean against it, hoping to catch a glimpse of the parking lots once more. To my surprise, the door swung open effortlessly, catching me off guard. It was as if the door had never been locked or secured at all, despite my earlier efforts. My eyes fell upon the broken latch lying on the ground before me, causing a knot to form in my stomach. Suddenly, my adrenaline surged as I heard faint footsteps echoing from the dimly lit hallway behind me. I hurriedly exited the door and stepped into the parking lot, feeling disoriented and uncertain. As I put some distance between myself and the door, I made a sharp turn. In the dim light, a mysterious figure approached the other side of the glass door. They lingered for a moment, casting an eerie gaze in my direction, before eventually walking away. I wasted no time in contacting the authorities and anxiously waited in the parking lot. However, once they arrived, there was no further sign of movement inside the building. It was later discovered that the intruder had made their escape through the back door, leaving the investigators with little to work with. While a few items were reported missing, they were of little consequence, likely just a result of a miscount in inventory. Nonetheless, the fact that the intruder possessed the means to tamper with the latch using some sort of tool or weapon only adds to the unsettling nature of the whole ordeal. They cunningly positioned the door to appear closed, aware that it would hinder my attempts to uncover the truth. Had I not noticed the broken door, I might have encountered the mysterious man directly. The outcome of such an encounter remains uncertain, but I couldn't shake the unsettling notion that he harbored ill intentions towards me. Consequently, I made the decision to leave that job and start anew, hoping to avoid any future encounters with him. I've been working as a receptionist at a popular hotel chain in the US for almost a year now. Lately, I've been assigned to the overnight shift, which runs from 11 o'clock p.m. to 7 o'clock a.m. It was a dark and stormy night, so I wasn't anticipating any unexpected visitors. According to the schedule, there were no bookings for tonight. On nights like these, my duty is to remain alert and handle phone calls or assist existing customers with room services or checkouts. As I sat in the hotel lobby, a cup of coffee by my side, I struggled to keep myself awake. Despite working overnights for a while now, I still found it difficult to fight off fatigue during my shifts. The relentless rain outside only added to my weariness. However, at 1 o'clock a.m., a phone call interrupted the monotony. I answered the call, but before I could say anything, a man quickly inquired about our availability for walk-ins. His voice was strangely muffled, and there was a loud background noise that made it difficult to hear. I assured him that we did have rooms available for walk-ins tonight. He responded, but I couldn't quite make out his words. As I asked him to repeat himself, I glanced up from the desk and noticed a small light glowing outside. It was coming from a phone held up to someone's ear, standing just outside the front window in the pouring rain. I realized it must be the man I was speaking to. Something about this situation made me feel uneasy, so I decided to pretend I hadn't seen him. A moment later, he ended the phone call, and I saw the lights outside go off. I could make out the outline of the man approaching the entrance as the doors opened. As he made his way through the hotel lobby, leaving a trail of water in his wake. He approached the counter and straightforwardly requested a room. Despite being completely drenched, with water dripping from his hair, his expression betrayed only weariness. I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer exhaustion etched on his face. I reluctantly agreed to find him a room and inquired about his preferred payment method. He hesitantly retrieved a debit card from his pocket and handed it to me. As I swiped it, my heart sank when the transaction was declined. I glanced up at him, only to find him fixated on me. Nervously, I informed him that the payment hadn't gone through and asked if he had another card to try. The man remained unresponsive, his gaze fixed and his body motionless, except for a few blinks. As the seconds ticked by without any reaction, a growing unease enveloped me. I glanced down and nervously placed the card on the desk, sliding it back to him. However, he didn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he turned and began walking towards the hallway that led to the rooms. At that moment, I knew something was amiss. Without hesitation, I pressed the button to summon the police and hurriedly made my way to the hallway where I found the man standing by the door of one of the rooms. He began aggressively pounding on the door, shouting for them to open it. I attempted to intervene, but I kept my distance, unsure of the potential danger he posed. Suddenly, he produced a small knife from his pocket and began attempting to force the door open. I urgently pleaded with him to stop, informing him that the police were on their way. The man paused momentarily, shooting me a chilling glare, before turning and screaming at me to open the door for him. As he proceeded down the hallway, I was overcome with fear and fled the hotel, making my way to the parking lot. Through the window, I watched as he returned to the same door and resumed his relentless pounding. The police arrived swiftly, managing to enter the room before the man could reach it. Miraculously, they apprehended him and successfully disarmed him of the knife. The person that was in the room came out, revealing a kind young lady who was visibly shaking and filled with fear. It turned out that the man who had been locked up in their car was actually her ex, someone she hadn't seen or spoken to in over 10 years. The fact that he knew where she was staying and even which room she was in remains a mystery, leaving everyone unsettled. The duration of his stalking activities is unknown, which adds to the disturbing nature of the situation. The potential horrors he could have inflicted had he gained entry are unimaginable.